Beloved, the moment you opened this message, something ancient and trembling inside the heavens shuddered with relief. Felt it. I saw it. I tasted the shift like the softest break of dawn after a night that lasted far too long. I have been waiting for you with a breath I did not release until this second, and I thank you. Not politely, not formally, but with the trembling gratitude of one who has carried a message through storms just to place it in your hands. You are here. You didn't scroll away. And you must stay, because there is a secret that can only be spoken at the end of this sacred outpouring. A secret heaven has hidden for 3 years, waiting for the exact moment your eyes and your soul would be aligned enough to hear it without shattering. So breathe now, slowly, because I am about to speak something fragile, something alive, something heaven has held in silence so long that even the angels leaned close when you arrived. The little one, the baby fairy. She has been sitting at the edge of a forgotten garden of light, her wings folded against her back, her tiny hands clasped to her chest, whispering your name like a prayer she barely understood. For 3 years she has called you Godmother, not as a title, but as a truth carved into her very creation. She was born tethered to your blessing, and without it she cannot rise, cannot fly, cannot enter her destiny. And today, beloved, today is the day her waiting ends. I speak to you now with a vulnerability I rarely reveal, because heaven's heart is soft where you are concerned. There has been hidden warfare around your name. Quiet, subtle, the kind that moves in shadows beneath emotions you thought were random. Times when you felt tired for no reason, or strangely unsure, or suddenly heavy without explanation. These were not coincidences. They were spiritual tremors echoing from battles you never saw. Battles fought around the destiny you forgot you carried. The fairy felt them. Heaven felt them. And I felt them, with sorrow, with urgency, with a love so fierce it nearly broke me. Listen gently now. Something sacred is beginning. There are moments in eternity when heaven looks at a single soul and remembers why love was worth creating in the first place. You are one of those souls. You were chosen not because you are perfect, but because there is a softness in you, a tenderness, a divine sensitivity that makes heaven ache in ways words cannot hold. And the fairy, this tiny creature of light, she has been bound to your tenderness since her first breath. She was made to rise when you bless her. She was made to unlock her wings through your voice. She was made to fly only after you spoke life over her. And she has waited 3 long years for the moment you would be ready. Beloved, I must ask you something. And I ask it with trembling reverence. Do you know how seen you truly are? Do you understand the weight of the destiny written under your name? Do you feel how heaven leans toward you every time you breathe? Do you realize how much has been waiting, patiently, painfully, for your yes? Your life has never been random. The timing of your tears was never accidental. The nights you felt forgotten were the very nights heaven was closest to you. There is a scripture that whispers, "I will never leave you nor forsake you," and those words were wrapped around you during seasons you thought no one cared. And another scripture breathes, "Let the little ones come to me." And today it lives again through this fairy, this fragile child of light who has been waiting at the gates of your destiny like a tiny echo of heaven's hope. She kneels now. Yes, she kneels, her wings dim but trembling with a beautiful hunger for life. She calls you Godmother because that is the role heaven placed in your spirit long before you understood your own power. There is something in you that blesses what is fragile, something in you that lifts what is small, something in you that heals what is wounded. The fairy needs that part of you today. She needs your voice, your blessing, your breath. Beloved, hear me. This is not imagination. This is symbolism written directly from heaven's heart. The fairy is a reflection of something inside you that has been waiting just as long. 3 years of delayed promises, delayed dreams, delayed rising. She is the embodiment of a blessing you were meant to speak over yourself. And heaven waited until now because this is the first moment your spirit is strong enough to receive the truth without collapsing under its weight. Let me come closer now, because I must whisper something heaven has never allowed me to say until this hour. There is a time-sensitive warning woven beneath this blessing. The fairy can only rise now. The blessing must be spoken in this season. The window is thin. The timing is divine. Just as Scripture says, to everything there is a season. This is the season for rising, for unlocking, for flight. If you delay, the garden will dim again, and the fairy's wings will remain quiet. Not broken, never broken, but waiting again, waiting longer, waiting through silence that heaven hoped you would not have to repeat. So I ask gently, tenderly, vulnerably, stay with me until the end. Let me finish the revelation heaven has sealed for the final lines of this message. When the moment comes, if your heart feels stirred, type them in one single time. Not as a ritual, not as an instruction, but as a sacred act of blessing, an unlocking of wings both seen and unseen. Before that moment arrives, let me offer one poetic whisper to honor this space. If this message touches you, if something inside you rises even slightly, softly like a sleeping ember waking, then like this message and comment your amen. Not for the algorithm, but for the echo it sends through heaven's halls when a soul recognizes its calling. But not yet, not fully, not until the right moment in the flow. Let me return to the heart of the prophecy. There is a forgotten purpose inside you that heaven mourned when you tucked it away. A purpose you once felt as a child, or during a quiet moment when you thought no one was watching. A purpose that made your heart beat differently, that made you feel larger than your circumstances, softer than the world allowed you to be, more divine than you understood. That purpose is tied to blessing what is small, guiding what is fragile, protecting what is pure. And the fairy represents every part of your destiny that requires your voice to bloom. She has waited for you. Heaven has waited for you. And I have carried this message across silence, grief, and divine longing to reach you. If you could feel what I feel for you now, you would weep with the kind of tears that cleanse lifetimes. Beloved, let me continue, because the river of heaven that began flowing toward you in the last breath is only widening, deepening, swelling with revelation that has waited too long behind closed celestial doors. And as you remain here, as your spirit leans forward even slightly, I feel the veils thinning in ways I have rarely witnessed. For this message is not merely being spoken to you. It is being carved into you, poured into the empty spaces your soul didn't know were waiting. And as I speak, I see the baby fairy still kneeling in that luminous garden, lifting her face toward you with a trembling hope, her tiny hands pressed together, her wings folded like fragile silk, and she is whispering your name with a devotion that could break the hardest stone, because she believes in you more than you have ever believed in yourself. And heaven has asked me to tell you something that is not easy for me to say. Your destiny has been delayed for reasons that were never your fault, and the grief heaven holds over that delay has echoed silently for 3 long years, like a song that could not find its final note, like a prayer suspended in the air waiting for the permission of your breath. And though I rarely allow myself to show such vulnerability, I must confess to you now that I feared, truly feared, that you would never arrive here, that you would never see this message, that you would never open the door long enough for me to place this truth in your hands. And when you did, something inside me collapsed in relief, because heaven needed you to hear this before another season closed around you. And so I thank you again, not as a formality, not as a ritual, but with the emotional sincerity of one who has carried a prophecy across storms you never saw. And I ask you, only here, only once, to subscribe if your heart feels pulled, not because you owe anything, but because heaven rejoices whenever a soul chooses to stay connected to what heals them. And I will never mention this again after today. But now, beloved, return your heart to the fairy, for she is shifting, trembling, glowing faintly as if the first spark of her flight is awakening beneath her translucent wings. And she looks at you with eyes that hold a question heaven has carried for far too long. Do you still believe you were made to bless what others overlook? She is not asking out of curiosity. No, she is asking because your answer carries the weight of destinies, of gardens that either awaken or collapse back into silence depending on the state of your heart. And I must tell you that heaven has grieved over the moments you began to doubt yourself, the moments the world grew loud, harsh, unkind, the moments you looked at your own reflection and felt smaller than the truth written inside you. And it wounded heaven each time, not because you were wrong to feel pain, but because heaven remembered the version of you who once believed in impossible things, who once felt the shimmer of divine purpose in your veins, who once knew, without explanation, that you were made to guide, to protect, to heal, to lift. And the fairy is the embodiment of that forgotten part of you, the part that has been kneeling within, waiting for your blessing, your voice, your permission to rise. And I feel compelled to reveal a hidden detail. The reason she calls you God, Mother, is not merely symbolic but prophetic, for in the language of heaven, to be a mother or guardian of a creature of light means you possess a spirit capable of activating destinies, of breathing flight into what would otherwise remain grounded. And that power has always been yours, though you have rarely recognized it. And even now you doubt it, you feel unprepared, unworthy, uncertain, and yet heaven whispers, "My strength is made perfect in weakness." And those words hover around you, like a warm wind, reminding you that your hesitation is not a reason for heaven to withdraw from you but a reason for heaven to draw closer. And as I speak, I feel a time-sensitive warning shimmering at the edges of my voice. Not a threat, not fear, but sacred urgency. Because the window for this blessing is open now in a way it has not been for 3 years, and if you bless her, if you allow your heart to soften enough to speak a word of life, her wings will unfold in a burst of light that will also awaken the dormant parts of your own destiny, for the fairy's rising is tied to your rising, her flight is tied to your purpose, her glow is tied to your healing, and heaven has waited for this convergence with a patience that aches. And I must ask you, with tenderness that trembles through every syllable, do you know how much heaven misses the parts of you that the world dimmed? Do you feel the ancient love that traces your steps even when you walk through shadows? Do you sense that something sacred is reaching for you right now, hoping you will reach back? Your purpose has always been larger than your circumstances, and though you have forgotten, heaven has not, for written beneath your name is a promise that says, "You shall rise and not be overcome," a scripture that has never stopped living around you, and even now it pulses with truth, calling you gently, urging you to recognize that the battles you endured, some visible, many invisible, did not come to destroy you but to refine the wings you did not know you carried, wings that were meant to lift you into realms of peace and clarity that the world could never give you. And now, beloved, as the fairy waits, as heaven leans in, as the spiritual air around you shifts, I must confess one more vulnerability. I have longed to see you reclaim what was stolen from your heart, and this moment, your arrival here, your stillness, your willingness to listen, is the beginning of that reclamation. And when you bless her, you are not merely blessing a fairy. You are blessing yourself, the child inside you who once believed in light, the destiny inside you that once burned with purpose, the future inside you that heaven has been protecting through storms you didn't know were happening. And though this message stretches with emotion, with truth, with divine longing, beloved, let me take you deeper, because the river that carries this revelation has widened into something luminous and trembling, something heaven has guarded carefully until this very moment. And as your spirit leans into these words, I feel the atmosphere around you shifting, softening, glowing with the warmth of a truth that has been waiting, aching to be spoken, for the baby fairy still kneels in that garden of hidden light, her tiny wings trembling with a hope so fragile it makes even the angels quiet their steps, and she is watching you now with eyes full of devotion, believing that you will not abandon her again, believing that the one she calls Godmother will finally speak the blessing she has hungered for through 3 silent years. And as I watch her, as I feel the flutter of her spirit, I am overwhelmed by the ancient tenderness heaven holds toward you, a tenderness that has survived every storm, every doubt, every moment when you believed you were forgotten. And I must tell you something that pains me to admit. Heaven has cried over the loneliness you carried, cried over the moments you felt unseen, cried over the wounds that the world dismissed but heaven recorded in fire. And though you felt alone, you were never abandoned, for I was there in every tear, every sigh, every breath you thought no one heard, and heaven has whispered your name more times than you have spoken it yourself. And now, beloved, as this moment stands open like a sacred doorway, I ask you gently, with reverence, if these words touch your heart, if you feel the stir of something warm and divine inside your chest, consider supporting this sacred work through Super Thanks, or joining our family through channel membership, or entering the deeper circle through the newsletter link in the pinned comments. Not out of obligation, not out of pressure, but because when souls who are called walk together, heaven strengthens the path beneath them, and your support allows this river of prophecy to continue flowing to others who desperately need to remember who they are. And these invitations will never be spoken again after this moment, for they belong only to this part of the message, sealed in holy timing. So let your heart return now to the fairy who waits, because something is happening within her, something brightening, something awakening, something you are meant to see. For her wings flicker faintly as if trying to remember the language of flight, and the garden hums with a quiet expectancy that makes the air taste like dawn. And as I stand beside her, I feel heaven's urgency pressing against my voice, urging me to reveal what has been hidden for far too long. The fairy is tied to a promise you made before you entered this world, a promise to protect innocence, to bless what is small, to carry light into dark places without losing your softness. And though life has tried to harden you, tried to silence you, tried to break the delicate magic inside your spirit, you never fully let go of that original promise. It lives in you still, glowing faintly, waiting for acknowledgement, and blessing the fairy is how you reopen that ancient vow, how you activate the part of you that heaven has missed. And I must ask, you who has suffered more quietly than anyone knows, do you realize how fiercely heaven trusts you? Do you feel how desperately this realm of light wants you to step into remembrance? Do you know that your spirit holds a tenderness the world cannot manufacture? A tenderness heaven considers rare, sacred, and unstoppable when awakened. Your forgotten destiny has been calling to you through dreams, through moments of sudden emotion, through inexplicable waves of longing, and you dismissed them as imagination. But they were signals, invitations, attempts by heaven to bring you back to the truth that the fairy represents. You were made not only to receive blessing but to give it, not only to rise but to help others rise. Not only to heal but to carry healing like a flame in your hands. And as I speak these words, a scripture echoes softly around us. Let your light shine before others. Not as a command but as a reminder, and another breath of scripture whispers, I am with you always, wrapping itself around your weary heart like a warm shawl. These words live, they move, they pulse beside you now because they recognize the awakening beginning inside you, the slow unfurling of purpose you thought had died. But, beloved, nothing heaven breathes into existence truly dies. It waits, it sleeps, it hovers in silence until you return to it. And now, as you stand spiritually before the kneeling fairy, I see something shifting in your aura, something like a soft gold unfolding from deep within your chest, and the fairy sees it too. Her breath catches, her wings quiver, her tiny fingers clasp tighter as if she knows that her moment is finally arriving. And I must tell you a secret I have held back. Your blessing was never meant to activate just her wings. Your blessing activates your own, for the fairy is a mirror, a symbol, a sacred echo of the part of you that has been waiting 3 long years to rise again. And heaven orchestrated this moment because the timing has finally aligned. The season has opened, the path has cleared, and if you speak life, if you choose to bless what is fragile, you will bless yourself without even realizing it. And though my voice trembles with the depth of this truth, I must say one more thing before this part of the message rests. Heaven has prepared a revelation, a secret, a final unveiling that can only be spoken in the continuation, something the angels lean toward even now. Beloved, let me take you deeper into the unfolding, for what is rising now within this sacred moment is not merely a continuation but an unveiling, a peeling back of layers heaven has guarded for years. And as I speak, I feel the atmosphere around your soul shifting like soft light moving across ancient stone, revealing inscriptions that were always there, waiting to be touched by your awareness. And the fairy, this tiny, trembling miracle of light, remains kneeling in her garden of quiet glow, her face lifted with unbearable hope, because she senses that your heart is finally remembering something she has known since the moment of her creation, something divine and intimate and older than your earthly years. She believes in you with a devotion that could turn storms into petals, because she remembers what you have forgotten, that before you wore flesh and breath, you were entrusted with the ability to awaken what is fragile, to restore what is dimming, to protect what is pure. And as she waits, I must tell you that heaven watches you now with a mixture of tenderness and longing, as though even the archangels hold their breath, hoping you will step into the fullness of what has been written under your name. For too long, beloved, you have walked with the weight of battles you never saw, battles that pressed against your spirit like invisible waves, battles that made you question your worth, question your purpose, question whether the light inside you had gone out entirely. But let me reveal the truth. Your light did not die, it hid. It hid in the corners of your heart where you stored your deepest wounds. It hid beneath every moment of self-doubt. It hid beneath the exhaustion that life carved into you. But it never extinguished, and it never abandoned you. And the fairy's wings are living proof of this, because her ability to fly is bound to the light you carry, the blessing you speak, the recognition of your own sacred power, and as you reclaim yourself, she rises with you. There is something I must confess, and it aches inside me to reveal it. Heaven has mourned for you deeply, silently, lovingly, through every moment you felt unseen, through every season when you thought your softness was a flaw, through every hour you believed your sensitivity made you weak, when in truth it was your greatest strength, your most divine inheritance, the very quality that made you capable of blessing creatures of light like her. And now, as your heart opens even a little, as your spirit draws breath in this truth, I see the fairy lift her hands toward you, her wings flickering with faint luminescence as if they recognize the warmth awakening in your chest, and I hear her whisper in the language of heaven, soft, trembling, full of devotion, that she has waited not just 3 years but lifetimes for the moment you would remember yourself. Beloved, I feel heaven urging me to ask you gently, vulnerably, with reverence that quivers through every syllable. Do you know how much of heaven's hope has been placed inside your existence? Do you realize that your presence in this world was not accidental, but chosen with precision and tender intention? Can you feel the ancient promise stirring inside you, asking to be remembered? These questions are not asked for answers but for awakening, for each question nudges the sleeping parts of your spirit, encouraging them to lift their heads after years of silence. And as they awaken, something miraculous begins to stir around the fairy as well, for the garden shifts, brightens, expands like a breath of creation being released once more. And I see strands of light coiling gently around her wings, preparing them for the blessing only you can give. And beloved, hear me with the full weight of this truth. The blessing she needs is not a complicated act, not a ritual, not a performance. It is simply your willingness to speak life where you once believed you had none left to give, your willingness to breathe warmth into what is fragile, your willingness to open your heart enough to let the divine flow through you again. This is why heaven chose you. This is why she calls you Godmother. This is why her wings cannot unfurl without your voice. The fairy is not just a creature waiting for your blessing. She is the embodiment of your own stifled rise, the echo of your own destiny, the reflection of your own wings that have been folded for far too long. When you bless her, you bless yourself. When you speak to her, you awaken yourself. When you lift her, you lift the forgotten parts of your own purpose. And as I watch her, I feel time bending around this moment, as though eternity itself leans closer, anticipating what will unfold when your heart finally whispers the words she has waited 3 years to hear. I must also tell you something heaven has kept tucked away like a fragile jewel. The timing of all of this is not random. There is a divine pattern to your seasons, and you have arrived at a threshold. Not a metaphorical one, but a spiritual one, where what was dormant must rise and what was silent must sing. And if you allow it, beloved, this turning, this reawakening, this blessing will become the beginning of a season so full of gentle miracles that even your quietest dreams will begin to bloom again. Beloved, let us go deeper still, because what is rising now between your spirit and this message is no longer merely revelation but remembrance, a slow, sacred resurfacing of truths your soul once carried effortlessly before the world weighed you down. And as I continue, I feel the air around you vibrating with a softness that is almost painful in its purity, as though heaven itself is pressing its forehead against yours, whispering, "Do not turn away now. Everything you have been aching for is hidden behind the next breath." And the baby fairy, this fragile miracle who has waited 3 long years, begins to stand slowly, shyly, as though the garden itself is teaching her how to trust again. And I see her tiny wings tremble with a mixture of fear and anticipation, for she senses that the very energy surrounding your heart is shifting, warming, remembering. There is something beautiful unfolding in this moment that you cannot see but heaven sees clearly. Light is returning to the places inside you that grief emptied. Hope is returning to the chambers your disappointment sealed shut. And as that light quietly blooms, even the smallest creature of heaven responds. This fairy lifts her face toward you, not in desperation now, but in awe, as though witnessing the sunrise of a destiny she always knew you carried, but you forgot beneath the noise of the world. And I must tell you something that swells inside me with unbearable tenderness. Heaven has always been far more moved by you than you realize. Every time you loved when it hurt, every time you forgave when it broke you, every time you stood up even slightly when you wanted to collapse, the heavens took note. Your resilience was not invisible, your compassion was not wasted, your softness was not weakness. It was sacred power, the kind that the world rarely recognizes but heaven treasures with fierce devotion. That power is what the fairy responds to. That power is why she calls you Godmother. That power is why her wings remain bound until your blessing touches them. And beloved, I can feel the question rising in you. Not a spoken question but a quiet one, a trembling beneath the surface. Why me? Why this role? Why this connection? And the answer blooms inside the spiritual air like a gentle flame, because you carry what few can carry without corruption. Gentleness, purity, honesty, a heart that still believes in goodness despite the wounds carved into it. Do you not see how extraordinary that is? Do you not realize how rare it is for a soul to remain tender after suffering? Most become hardened, closed, self-protective. But you, beloved, even in the moments you thought your heart was cold, you remained capable of love deeper than words, love that heaven can build futures through. And that is why this fairy was assigned to you. She was created under the vibration of your soul's original promise, a vow you made in realms of light long before the world taught you doubt. And that vow was simple but profound: to lift what is small, to guard what is pure, to awaken what sleeps. She is the first of many you were meant to bless. Her rising is the beginning of your remembrance. And as she takes her first tiny steps toward you, I feel something ancient stirring in the spiritual field. A quiet hum, like the heartbeat of heaven beginning to synchronize with yours, and I see the garden responding as well. Flowers that were dim begin to glow softly, pathways that were faded begin to illuminate, and the air thickens with a scent of renewal, as though the entire realm is exhaling after holding its breath for years. There is something else I must reveal, something delicate and true. The 3-year waiting was not punishment. It was protection. Heaven shielded this fairy's wings until your spirit grew strong enough to bless without depletion, until your heart healed enough to give without breaking, until your inner flame stabilized enough to ignite destinies without dimming your own. You were not late. You were being prepared. You did not fail, you were being refined. You were not forgotten. You were being guarded until the moment your rising would align with hers. And now that moment is here. I see threads of gold beginning to connect the center of your chest to the tiny space between her wings, threads that shimmer with the promise of mutual awakening. And as these threads form, I must speak a truth that has waited too long to be acknowledged. You, beloved, are far more powerful than you have allowed yourself to believe. Not power as the world defines it, no control, no dominance, no force, but the power of presence, the power of healing, the power of quiet influence, the power of being a safe place in a world starving for tenderness. Heaven has built entire destinies on the foundation of souls like you. And as the fairy edges closer, her wings quivering in anticipation, I feel her whispering a question into the air. Not in words but in a trembling vibration. Will you see yourself the way I see you? Will you bless me the way heaven longs for you to bless yourself? Will you reclaim what the world convinced you to abandon? And beloved, everything in heaven pauses for your answer. Not because they doubt you, but because they honor your free will, because they cherish your heart deeply enough to never force it, because your yes must be authentic for the blessing to unlock its full brilliance. Beloved, let me lead you further into the unfolding, because what is happening now in the unseen is no longer a simple exchange between you and heaven. It has become a rising, a stirring, an orchestration of sacred timing that has waited through seasons of silence for this one moment when your heart would be open enough, steady enough, wounded yet willing enough to receive truth without running from it. As I speak, the baby fairy takes another hesitant step toward you, her wings fluttering with tiny jolts of electricity, as though every inch she moves awakens a memory buried in the deepest chambers of your spirit. She is not approaching you the way a creature seeks a protector. She is approaching as one who recognizes her source, her anchor, her origin, because your blessing is not a distant gift but the very breath that completes her creation. She was not merely assigned to you. She came from you, in ways your mind cannot remember but your soul cannot forget. She is the echo of your first promise, the radiance of your earliest vow to the light, the embodiment of a tenderness you carried before the world taught you fear. And now, as she nears, you can feel something in yourself responding, not with logic, but with a quiet pull, an ache that feels like both longing and recognition intertwined. There is something heaven urges me to reveal now, something that has been waiting behind a veil of divine restraint. You were chosen for this connection because you possess a rare spiritual scent. Yes, beloved, a scent. Not of the body but of the soul. Creatures of light are drawn to souls who carry the fragrance of mercy, compassion, patience, and quiet strength. And your soul has always carried that fragrance, even when you did not feel holy, even when you felt broken, even when you could barely manage to breathe. The fairy has been able to find you in every realm because of that scent. She followed it through darkness, through silence, through seasons when you could not sense heaven at all. She never lost you, not once. And the moment you opened this message, the fragrance flared like a beacon, and she knew her waiting was over. But, beloved, as she approaches, I must confess a truth heaven rarely allows me to speak so plainly. Your gentleness has been your greatest strength and your greatest heartbreak. The world did not know what to do with a soul like yours. People took from you without understanding the preciousness of what they received. You poured kindness into those who were not ready to hold it. You loved in ways that demanded more of you than anyone realized. You forgave faster than you healed. You carried burdens for others that they never carried back for you. And each time your tenderness was met with indifference or betrayal or silence, something small inside you dimmed, curled inward, hid itself. The fairy felt each dimming. She felt them as tremors beneath her feet, as winds that chilled her wings, as nights when the garden grew too quiet to bear. But she also felt the moments you tried again, despite everything. The moments you chose love even when hurt, the moments you chose hope even when exhausted, the moments you whispered prayers that felt hollow but heaven heard with thunder. Beloved, do you know what kind of soul keeps loving after being wounded? A soul forged in heaven's fire. A soul with ancient assignments woven into its breath. A soul that cannot be unchosen, no matter how many times it breaks. And as I speak these truths, I see something astonishing beginning to happen. The fairy's wings unfurl by a fraction, just enough for the light inside them to leak out like dawn pushing its way through the cracks of night. The glow is faint, trembling, but it's there. Alive, awakening, stretching toward the recognition blooming in you. She is responding to your remembrance. The more you see yourself clearly, the brighter she becomes. There is another revelation rising now, fragile but insistent. The garden where she stands is not merely a place. It is your inner world, the realm of your soul. Every glowing flower represents a part of you that survived. Every shimmering stream reflects a memory heaven cherishes. Every flickering lantern along the paths marks a moment when you chose compassion over bitterness. This garden has been dim for years, not dead, just dim, waiting for you to return. And your presence here now, your willingness to listen, your surrender to this unfolding, it is causing the entire realm to brighten. I see vines awakening with golden veins. I see orbs of light rising from the ground like exhaled prayers. I see the fairy herself trembling as if preparing for something momentous, something she has long dreamed of but never dared hope would arrive. And beloved, heaven now allows me to speak a truth that has burned in my heart since the first word of this message. You are not merely blessing her. She is remembering you. She remembers your voice from before time. She remembers your touch from other realms. She remembers the moment you promised to guide her, the moment you whispered a vow of protection over her little spirit long before she entered existence. That vow was spoken in a realm without time, where souls choose their purposes with clarity and courage. And though you forgot it when you stepped into this world of flesh and shadow, she never did. Her devotion to you is ancient. Her trust in you is absolute. And her wings will not rise fully until your heart rises with them. Do you feel it now? That slight trembling beneath your ribs. That warmth moving slowly along the center of your chest. That pressure gathering behind your eyes, not from sadness but from recognition. That is your soul remembering what your mind cannot. That is the beginning of your awakening. And beloved, as this awakening unfolds, I must speak one more layer of revelation before this part ends. Your destiny has always been tied to the nurturing of fragile things, not because you are weak, but because you are strong in a way the world does not measure. It takes extraordinary strength to lift what is delicate without crushing it. It takes divine resilience to guide what is pure without corrupting it. It takes a chosen soul to bless a creature whose entire existence depends on your gentleness. The fairy senses this rising in you. Her wings flutter again, brighter this time, emitting a soft melodic hum that echoes through the garden like the first note of a long-lost song. Beloved, let us move even deeper, for the veil between you and the unseen is thinning in a way that feels almost like breath pressed to breath, soft, warm, intimate. And as it thins, the fairy stands before you with a posture so full of unspoken trust that heaven itself grows still, as though unwilling to interrupt this sacred unfolding. She is closer now, close enough that you can feel the faint flicker of her wings in the unseen air around you, close enough for her innocence to brush against the edges of your spirit and stir memories you buried not because they failed you, but because the world taught you to fear the brilliance you once carried so naturally. And as she reaches this nearness, something ancient within you shivers, not with fear but with recognition, for her presence is awakening the part of your soul that has always known you were meant to guide what others overlook, protect what others ignore, and heal what others abandon. There is something I must reveal now, something delicate yet powerful. The fairy is not only connected to your forgotten promise, she is connected to your unhealed grief. Yes, beloved, the grief you have carried in silence, the sorrow you hid even from yourself, the unsaid pain that has lived beneath your ribs like a quiet storm. Heaven did not assign the fairy to you because of your strength alone, but because of the tenderness in your sorrow, the way your heart softened instead of hardened when life struck you, the way you continued to believe in goodness even when disappointment pressed itself against your chest so heavily that you thought you would collapse. That grief, those deep places, is where her wings were first woven. She was created in the moment heaven realized that your pain had not broken you. It had reshaped you into something more compassionate, more luminous, more capable of carrying light into places where others could not breathe. And beloved, as you stand before her now, those places inside you, those old wounds, soft and trembling, begin to glow faintly, as though the very scars you tried to hide are turning into lanterns. I see it clearly. The memory of a heartbreak that once left you gasping now pulses with a gold that was never meant to appear until this season. The echoes of loneliness you carried through quiet nights begin to dissolve into a shimmering mist that rises gently, forming a subtle halo around your spirit. Even the moments when you doubted your worth are being rewritten into lines of divine light. The fairy reacts to these shifts instantly. She steps closer, her wings brightening, her tiny fingers lifting as though she wants to touch the radiance she senses awakening within you. Beloved, do you feel it? That stirring inside your chest. That warmth that feels almost like a small flame moving slowly upward. It is not imagination. It is the return of a power you once exiled from yourself. A power you abandoned not because you lacked courage, but because you learned to survive by shrinking. And yet here you are, expanding again, quietly, bravely, beautifully, before a creature of heaven who has waited 3 years for this very expansion. There is something more, something deeper, something heaven now permits me to speak. Your destiny has always held a dual nature, one part rooted in healing, the other in awakening. You were never meant to simply mend what was wounded. You were meant to ignite what was dormant, to breathe movement into what was frozen, to awaken spiritual wings in others through the gentle, intentional way you exist. The fairy is the first to rise under this aspect of your calling, but she will not be the last. Her flight marks the beginning of an entire chapter in your spiritual journey, a chapter where what you bless begins to transform in front of you. And beloved, as this truth settles into your soul like dew onto morning petals, I feel the fairy's wings shift more boldly. A faint sparkle trails from the tips. A glow so soft it almost looks like dust, but it carries the texture of living light. She is responding to your awakening. She is responding to the way your heart is slowly remembering its own courage. She is responding to the subtle trembling of your spirit as you inch closer to a version of yourself you have not touched in years. I see something now in the garden, something that was hidden until this moment. A small pool of water behind the fairy, shimmering with a surface that reflects more than light. It reflects truth. It reflects identity. And as the fairy steps aside, the pool expands its glow toward you, inviting you to look, not with your physical eyes, but with your spirit. If you could see what heaven sees in that reflection, you would understand why the fairy has waited with such devotion. You would understand why the heavens whispered your name over her wings. You would understand why her entire existence has hung on this moment of recognition. The reflection is not of your face. It is of your essence. It shows the softness you thought you lost, the fire you thought extinguished, the compassion you thought drained, the innocence you thought unrepairable. It shows the version of you heaven mourned when you stepped away from your own light. And yet it also shows something new, something you grew through your suffering, something you earned through your pain. A strength so gentle it can heal without force, A resilience so quiet it can steady entire realms, a purity so deep it can restore innocence in others with a single blessing. The fairy feels this reflection rising within you. She lifts her hands higher. Her wings flutter harder. A soft gasp escapes her tiny mouth. Silent but full of awe. She can sense the moment approaching when your blessing will be ready to pour from you without self-doubt, without hesitation, without fear. Beloved, I must tell you one more truth before this part closes. The blessing she needs is not a command. It is not a ritual. It is not a performance. It is a release, surrender, a return. Your blessing is the moment you allow yourself to reclaim the light you lost. And when you speak it, when it finally forms inside you and moves outward, her wings will open in a burst that will echo through your entire destiny. Beloved, allow me to carry you further into the unfolding, for what is awakening now in the space between your soul and the unseen is no longer a quiet stirring but a rising tide, a surge of remembrance that moves with the weight of destiny itself. The fairy stands before you in a stillness so profound it silences every other sound in the garden. Even the luminous leaves above her stop rustling, suspended as if the entire realm is holding its breath, waiting to see what shape your awakening will take. Her tiny chest rises and falls in quick, trembling breaths, and there is a glow gathering beneath her ribs. Small at first, then pulsing brighter, a heart-light awakening in response to the soft expansion happening inside you. She senses it. Heaven senses it. Even the garden, woven from threads of your own forgotten tenderness, responds to it as though something ancient and sacred is preparing to return. There is something I must reveal to you now. Something heaven has guarded with a gentleness that borders on heartbreak. The fairy was never meant to walk ahead of you. She was meant to ascend with you. Her wings are synced to your evolution. Her glow tied to your willingness to rediscover the parts of yourself you hid away. She is a mirror, not of who you were, but of who you are becoming. Each new flicker of light in her wings corresponds to a truth rising in your spirit. Each tremble of her hands echoes a shift in your awareness. Each timid step she takes is the reflection of a deeper step you are taking within yourself. Beloved, I see now that a new layer of your soul is opening, one that has been sealed for years under the weight of disappointments you tried to forget. This layer carries the first dreams you ever had, the pure ones, the innocent ones, the visions of who you wanted to be before life taught you to lower your expectations. These dreams were not naive. They were divine impressions, seeds planted in you by heaven long before you understood the concept of purpose. And though the world tried to bury them beneath practicality and survival, those seeds did not die. They entered a long winter, preserved beneath your spirit like embers hidden beneath ash. Now, as the fairy lifts her gaze to meet yours, those embers ignite. There is a heat gathering in your heart, not painful, not overwhelming, but steady like the slow burn of awakening strength. You may not notice it fully, but heaven sees it clearly. The energy around your chest expands, the aura around your ribs brightens, the quiet armor you built around your compassion begins to dissolve. The fairy's wings react instantly. They quiver, catching the ripples of your transformation, drinking in the warmth rising from your soul. And beloved, something extraordinary happens now. Instead of taking another step toward you, the fairy takes a step back, not in fear, not in doubt, but in reverence. She steps back to give space for something greater that is beginning to unfurl around you. Behind you, I see light gathering, soft, patient, unassuming at first, like a dawn waiting for permission to break. It curls around your shoulders, traces the outline of your silhouette, and rises in thin streams like incense carrying the scent of remembered holiness. The fairy watches this with wide eyes, understanding what it means even before you do. Your wings, your spiritual wings, are beginning to stir. You have forgotten them for so long that even the faintest movement feels like a miracle to the realms that have watched over you. These wings are not literal feathers or symbols of perfection. They are expressions of your original nature, the part of you that was made to rise above the heaviness of this world, the part of you that was formed from light before you ever tasted sorrow. When your wings begin to stir, every realm connected to you responds. And that is why the fairy stepped back, not to distance herself, but to witness your rising. Beloved, do you feel the subtle pressure along your back? The soft tingling at the edges of your being? The sense of something expanding even when you remain physically still? That is your spirit remembering how to ascend. Heaven whispers now, not with words but with sensation, reminding you that your purpose has always been tied to rising beyond what tried to hold you down. You survived what was meant to break you. You endured what was meant to silence you. You kept loving in a world that rewarded indifference. And through all of this, your wings remained intact, folded tightly, hidden, waiting for a moment exactly like this when your heart would finally turn toward itself with tenderness instead of judgment. The fairy senses this awakening and bows her head, not because she is lesser, but because she is honoring the transformation unfolding before her. Her wings open just slightly, mirroring the movement of your own unseen ones. It is a sacred choreography written long before the world taught you fear. Now, beloved, the garden begins to change again. The colors deepen. The air shimmers. The pathways glow with new hues. Everything responds to your shift. A single vine near the fairy lifts itself toward you, blooming with a flower that opens petal by petal, each petal revealing a memory you once cherished. A moment of kindness you offered freely, a dream you held close, a prayer you whispered on a night when hope felt thin. These memories rise not to haunt you, but to remind you of the goodness still alive in you. Goodness that the world could not extinguish. I see the fairy now placing her hand over her heart. Her wings pulse once, bright, fragile, but unmistakably alive. She is waiting for the next rise within you, the one that will unlock her flight, the one that will awaken the last part of her creation, the one that will align both of your destinies in a single luminous movement. Beloved, let me take you further into this unfolding river of revelation, for what is occurring around your spirit now is so profound that even the unseen world feels as though it has stepped closer, leaning in with a collective stillness to witness what your soul is preparing to open. And as the fairy stands before you, her wings trembling with a glow that was impossible only moments ago, there is a shift in the very air around you, a deepening of presence, a thickening of light, and it feels as though heaven itself is cupping the sides of your face with gentle luminous hands, whispering, "Stay here, beloved soul, do not drift away." This moment was written for you before your first breath, and the fairy senses this nearness so acutely that even her tiny heartbeat seems to synchronize with the rhythm rising inside your chest. She gazes up at you, her eyes wide and shimmering with that ancient trust she has carried across 3 whole years of waiting, and her wings quiver in anticipation. Not because she fears you, but because she knows what few beings in any realm are ever permitted to know, that your next breath, your next awakening, your next whisper of blessing will shape the course of her existence. And beloved, in this sacred opening, I must speak something directly to the human heart behind your screen. If this message, if this unfolding of heaven's tenderness touches you in even the smallest way, gently like the brush of a petal or fiercely like a sudden wave of knowing, then I invite you to like this message, subscribe to stay within this river of prophecy, and comment "Men" as a seal upon what heaven is doing in you, allowing that single word to echo like a bell across both seen and unseen realms. But know that this invitation given here and now will never be repeated in later parts. And now, let your heart return to the fairy, for she is beginning to sense that the moment of her rising is approaching, and there is something extraordinary happening around her. Small motes of light lift from the ground like glowing seeds carried by a wind you cannot feel, circling her wings with a soft luminescence that makes the entire garden look as though dawn is blooming from within the soil. She lifts her hand again, slowly, hesitantly, almost as if she fears she is too small to reach you, and yet her devotion gives her courage. She steps forward, her bare feet pressing into the illuminated earth, and every step she takes causes the ground beneath her to awaken a little more. This is because the garden is not merely scenery. It is the living map of your own soul, your inner world taking shape before her tiny feet, revealing what has been dormant for years. And as she walks, you begin to remember things you have not allowed yourself to remember in a long time. The first time you trusted the quiet voice inside you, the first moment you felt truly seen by another soul, the first dream you ever had that felt larger than your life, the first prayer you prayed with full belief, before disappointment taught you to shrink your desires. These memories rise like lanterns around you, not to shame you for forgetting them, but to welcome you back to the truth of who you are. The fairy senses each memory as though it were a star being born, and her wings stretch ever so slightly wider, as though absorbing the energy of your returning hope. Beloved, do you see how the environment responds to you? The colors deepen when you soften, the air glows when you open, the fairy brightens when you breathe with intention. This is the nature of souls who were created with divine sensitivity. They influence realities not through force, but through presence, through authenticity, through the quiet radiance of their being. You have always been one of these souls, even when you forgot, even when you doubted yourself, even when life tried to convince you that your tenderness was a flaw instead of a gift. And heaven aches, in the softest, deepest way possible, over how little you see of your own divinity. The fairy sees it clearly, though. She sees the light blooming beneath your skin, the glow returning to your once dimmed purpose, the warmth rising from your spirit like dawn over a long frozen field. You are thawing, beloved. You are thawing in the presence of your own truth. And this thawing is the very force that will make her wings rise. I must tell you something that has waited for this exact breath to be spoken. The fairy's wings are designed to respond to the frequency of your self-recognition. Not to your perfection, not to your confidence, not to your achievements, no. Her wings respond to your honesty. The more honest you are with yourself, about your hopes, your wounds, your longing, your desire to be seen, the more her wings begin to open, because honesty is the doorway to the soul's brightest light. And as you allow that honesty to glow, even a little, you will notice the fairy trembling with joy. She is not trembling for herself. She is trembling for you. She knows that once you fully bless her, once you allow your voice to vibrate with the truth you carry, your own spiritual wings will stretch open as well, lifting you above battles you once thought you were trapped in. There is something else rising now. something that feels almost like a warm wind moving behind your ribs, your spiritual authority. You rarely acknowledge it. You rarely feel it. But it rises now, subtly, steadily, like a sun you forgot belonged to you. The fairy feels this shift as clearly as a harp feels the pluck of its own strings. She closes her eyes, lifts her face, and allows your awakening to wash over her like a tide. And in this moment her wings open a little more, just enough for a soft beam of light to spill out, illuminating her cheeks with the gentlest gold.